Welcome to Football Game Plan's College Football Tailgate Show, presented by Football Game Plan. I am David Hashagen, joined as always by the czar of the playbook, Emery Hunt. Another week and even more losses in the top 10 as the enigma of the 2019 college football season continues. There's a new number one this week, Emery, and just before the college football playoff poll comes out next week, the Bayou Bengals are number one. LSU takes the top spot from Alabama, despite Alabama not losing a game. The question now is, does number one LSU deserve to be there above Alabama?
Absolutely. You look at how LSU is playing right now. You talk about a team that's playing with supreme confidence. And there are a couple other teams that come to mind, and we'll talk about them later, that they're just playing with flat-out confidence. LSU's passing game. They may have the Heisman Trophy winner in Joe Burrow. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is one of the best backs that no one is talking about. He's super elusive and does a great job of making guys miss. So they got the running game. We know about their offensive line. We know about their defensive line. In the secondary, Stingley Jr. is one of the top freshman corners in the game. He was a Football Game Plan 400 top player. And so now you combine that with everything that's going on. Coach Orgeron looks younger, energetic. They have the great offensive coordinator, and the passing game is working. They're definitely the number one team in the nation. They're great on all sides of the ball. They've won close games. They won big games. They beat Texas. They beat Florida. They beat Auburn. This is your number one team in the country by far.
Well, number one and number two are certainly getting their due respect in the polls. Two teams that are not, though, are Minnesota and Baylor. They are both undefeated, both of them flying way under the radar. The question is, though, how good are these teams? Let's start with the Golden Gophers.
I think Minnesota is good, but here's the thing about Minnesota. You look at the side of the Big Ten where they're playing. Right. Obviously they're not the same conference or side of the division as Ohio State or Penn State. But Minnesota is playing good. This is the first time they've been 8-0 since 1939, I believe. They won the national championship, their last national championship in 1960. So it's been a while. They've been highly ranked before. My freshman year in college, which was 1999, they were ranked 13th. And they had a really good running game then. This is a well-balanced team. They're playing with a lot of energy. They have an energetic head coach and PJ Fleck, who has got these guys buying into the message. So I think they're a solid team. I think they're maybe around 15 to 20. I think that's how good they are. I don't think they're top 10 good just yet. But Baylor, I think Baylor is a team that you want to keep an eye on. Matt Rule was tremendous up here at Temple. He had Temple playing top 10 ball with their defense. And this Bears team looks a lot like those Temple squads did. They could beat you with the passing game. They could beat you running the football. They're great situationally. They can pressure. They have the best defense in the Big 12. And he who has the best defense in the Big 12 is usually king. So I'm all in on Baylor. Minnesota, good story. We'll find out as the season goes on. If they can remain undefeated, they have a big game in a couple of weeks against Penn State.
And with Baylor, especially with Oklahoma and Texas both losing last week, it is critical for them to keep that undefeated record. Let's talk about, though, the rest of the teams that are in the top 25, and more specifically, the group of 5 teams. There are quite a few of them now in the top 25, but the question is, which one will be better and how far do they go? Do you like Boise, San Diego State? You got SMU is obviously ranked very highly. Appalachian State's right there. Louisiana Tech is looking very good. Who is the best team that you think will get into a New Year's Bowl?
Man, this is a tough question because you listed off some fun teams to watch, number one, but really good football teams. I feel like we've watched Boise State play 15 games already so far this season. They've been on TV every week. But SMU, to me, 8-0, and the way they're winning games. You saw how they had to fight tooth and nail to hold off the Houston Cougars from the upset last week down there in Houston. They won with their defense. They won shootouts. They beat TCU. This team looks like they're legitimately challenging to be in that New Year's Six Bowl. I think SMU, out of all the teams you mentioned, San Diego State's playing really well also, but I think SMU is the best of the group of 5.
I agree. I think SMU might be the best team in North Texas right now, mainly because they've beaten the 2 teams that are around them. But you talk about the story, too, with SMU. Obviously, this is the first time they've been ranked since before the death penalty, and the comeback that they've had over the past 5 years specifically, and now this year has come to the peak. SMU is a team to be messed with again. We'll see what happens when they move forward. They will get challenged, I think, by Appalachian State in the polls, maybe Boise State, but I think SMU holds on and takes that spot. Let's move now into our game of the week. It's a big matchup in the AAC West, and it involves those SMU Mustangs. They are number 15 in the poll this week. They look to continue that campaign for a New Year's Six Bowl, but this week, Number 24, Memphis is their opponent. SMU's undefeated 8-0. Memphis, the Tigers are 7-1. This is a really good ball game.
Yeah, let's start with some keys to victory for SMU in this one. For the Mustangs, number one, stay on your horse. I thought they took their foot off the gas last week against Houston, allowed the Cougars back into the ball game, and had to hold on. Had to get a great defensive pass breakup to knock out Houston. Otherwise, it would have been all for naught. So stay on your horse. You have a big lead. Ride that horse to victory. Defensively, against Memphis, it's about securing the edges. If you allow Memphis to get to the perimeter in the run game, they're going to run all day on you. They have tremendous tailbacks. They have speed. They can hit you with the big play outside. But if you force them to play a downhill game, you give yourself a shot. So it's about setting the edge defensively. Keep everything bottled up, tackle to tackle. Don't let those guys go east and west. Now for the Tigers in this ball game, when you look at the Tigers offense, and we talk about the running game and how explosive they are, for Memphis, it's going to be about taking small bites of the apple. Don't try to go for the home run early. Slowly work yourself down the field because your best defense could be your offense keeping SMU off the field. And speaking of the Tigers defense, wherever James Prochet is lined up, take him out of the game because that's a guy that's the big play threat in the passing game for SMU. They have to bracket him, make Bouchel go to other targets consistently, take away Prochet, and you help limit what SMU can do in the passing game.
And this is what Memphis has done the last 3 or 4 years. They've been really, really good, gotten into the rankings toward the end of the season. Now they have a ranked opponent who wins this ball game.
Well, we done talked about SMU a lot on the show, so we have to pick them to win this game. So I'm taking SMU to win this ball game against Memphis. I do think the Mustangs are a team of destiny. They've played well. They've beaten TCU. They had a test against Houston. So they're winning, like you said, within the state. I think they take care of business and get a huge win against a very good Memphis team.
And seeing them against potentially Oklahoma or Texas in a New Year's Bowl, that would be an exciting game to watch.
That would be something to watch, man. That's something that brings back those old Southwest Conference games versus the Big 8 games. That's before you were born. But those matchups earlier in my youth of watching college football, SMU being good is a great thing, in my opinion, for college football, especially for the Dallas Metroplex area.
When we return, we'll preview some of the big games in the FBS coming up next week as we get into the home stretch of the 2019 season here on the Football Game Plan College Football Tailgate Show.
Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGo Offense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGo Offense.
Welcome back to the College Football Tailgate Show here on the Game Plus Network. David Hassagen here with Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. It's now time to break down some of the big matchups in the FBS. Let's start with one of the marquee matchups of every season. It's the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Number 8 Georgia taking on number 6 Florida. It's put up or shut up time in the SEC.
Yeah, it's definitely put up or shut up time, but it's put up or shut up time for both of these teams because we've seen sluggish offensive play rear its ugly head for both. So when you look to the defensive side of the ball, who has the better defense? I kind of like Florida's defense and how they're able to get after them on the corners. Their offense, it looks a little bit more consistent than what we're seeing from Georgia. Georgia has DeAndre Swift, so they're going to always have a chance. Jake Fromm, to me, is a good player. I know some people think of him as a great player, but we'll see. He'll have to be great against Florida. I like the Gators in this one. I think the Gators can pull off the upset and knock off the Bulldogs.
And this is a huge one with the college football playoff poll coming out next week. Critical one here. Next up, Virginia Tech taking on number 16 Notre Dame. Notre Dame, the Irish, took a big loss in the rain, in the slop of Michigan last week. They're looking for a bounce back. Virginia Tech might be the perfect opponent.
Who knew Virginia Tech was 5-2? This is a team that has got blown out by Duke. They've played terrible all season, but here they are, 5-2 right now on the season. Notre Dame is coming in reeling. You know the saying, can't let one loss become two. They got manhandled out there in Ann Arbor by Michigan. Now, Michigan has a much better collection of skill talent than Virginia Tech, but we know Virginia Tech, judging by their record and how they got there, they're not going to be a pushover. But I think Notre Dame will take care of business. Brian Kelly and his squad will get the win against the Hokies.
Let's move now to the ACC and our late season FCS versus FBS matchup. Number 4 Clemson hosting Wofford. Wofford ranked number 20 in the polls in the FCS stats poll this week. Clemson looking for a cheap win. Wofford might not be the one to give them to them, though.
Yeah, when you schedule this game, you think, okay, that's Wofford. Yeah, cool. But when you watch Wofford, you're like, wow, they're one of the better teams in the FCS. and also they run the triple option. That's a problem. And if you're Clemson, with your defense not being what it was last year, there's a potential for, I don't want to say an upset, but there's a potential for this game to be very close within the first half of the first quarter. So people will be worried. Clemson fans will be upset with what's going on. Can they figure out the option? I do like Wofford's secondary, but there's way too many premier athletes at that position, along with a premier quarterback that has very good accuracy, along with a premier tailback that has legit end-zone to end-zone speed. Wofford will be game for about a good quarter, maybe even the first half. But I think Clemson's talent will start to overtake this team, this Terriers ball club, and get the win. I do like Clemson.
That's a very polite way to say they have no chance in this ball game. Let's move now to the ACC. NC State taking on number 23 Wake Forest. Talk about a team that's not getting any respect, and that's the Demon Deacons. They get a win here, though, you have to start talking about them nationally.
Well, they were one of the darlings of the early part of the college football season. They were undefeated. Jamie Newman was playing great football, then he gets hurt. But the one consistent threat they've had all season at receiver is Sage Surratt, who's an NFL prospect on the perimeter. He's a big playmaker. NC State has to find a way to take him away. If they can't stop Surratt from going off in this passing game, they're going to have a problem. NC State's defense, to me, is not what it once was. This was a team that you can say defensive line you. Numerous first-round picks coming out this defensive line. First round through third round, there's always turning out talent. Defensively, I think they're okay this year. Offensively, they're not there. So I think Wake gets a big win against NC State.
Let's move now to another game for the military academies, the second game in the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy. Army taking on Air Force. Army, we thought they might be better than they were so far this season. They might be right for the picking coming off a loss against Tulane for this Air Force Falcons team.
Yeah, I was high on Army, especially coming into the season and then into the week 2 when they played Michigan. I thought they were going to beat the Wolverines, nearly pulled that off. But after that game, it has not been the same Army football team. Air Force, on the other hand, have been one of the surprise stories in the Mountain West Conference. So you're right. Army, I think, is primed for the picking in this game. I do like Air Force. Again, with the way they run their option and their ability to throw the football with some effectiveness and efficiency, I think the Falcons get the W.
Let's move now to another rivalry game, this time in the state of Kansas. Number 22 Kansas State taking on the University of Kansas. Both teams coming off massive wins for the respective programs. Kansas State knocking off number 5 Oklahoma. Kansas getting a rare Big 12 victory against Texas Tech in dramatic fashion. This game might be closer than the experts think.
Did you see how Kansas won that game
Incredible
last
stuff.
week against
Incredible
Texas?
stuff.
Like, that has to be something of the ages, that how they won that game. However, when you saw how Kansas State dominated Oklahoma, you just can't walk into Manhattan, Kansas, and not think you're going to not stop the run or not be able to run the ball. So the Wildcats have always been great on defense up front. It doesn't matter who's the coach. This is what they do. Kansas right now, they do have Pooka Williams, outstanding talent, but I don't think they can pull off the upset second consecutive week. I do like K-State to win.
And a good coaching matchup in this one as well when you consider all of the pedigree on both sidelines here. It's going to be a real chess match between these two.
Kleiman for Kansas State, Les Miles for Kansas. So it should be a great game nonetheless.
One more game to talk about here, and that is between Buffalo and Eastern Michigan. Both teams are 4-4. This is going to be a critical game for both teams if they want to become bowl eligible. Why should we keep an eye on this game?
The two running backs I love from Buffalo. Every time you look up, Buffalo is running the football with effectiveness. Jarrett Patterson is one of the more underrated backs in the country, regardless of division, regardless of conference. I think Buffalo wins this ball game. This is a really interesting matchup because neither team was expected to be this good this season because of the losses to graduation. Both guys lost NFL players. Both teams lost NFL players, but they've been surprisingly good, especially on the defensive side of the football. But I think Buffalo's offense, more particularly their run game, will be the reason why they knock off the Eagles.
After the break, we'll go through some of the other big matchups from across all divisions on the Football Game Plan College Football Tailgate Show. Stay with us.
Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Ninth and Lux. Visit the website, ninethandlux.com, and check out the clothing gallery. Do You Music, with featured artist IW in his latest album, Season 2. You can check that out on iTunes as well as doyoumusic.com. Nesby Phipps, Art, Life, Entertainment. NesbyPhipps.com. Grind It Out Fitness. Visit the website, grinditoutfitness.com, and download the app.
Welcome back to the Football Game Plan College Football Tailgate Show. Let's move into some of the lesser-known matchups for this week. We start with a couple more FBS games. Our first one comes from the Sun Belt. Texas State taking on your Raging Cajuns, Emory. Louisiana becomes bowl eligible with a win this week. How do they knock off the Bobcats?
By sticking with the script. Their run game has been phenomenal. 4 deep in the backfield. Their offensive line has tremendous talent. Kevin Dotson, an NFL prospect, may even go to the Senior Bowl. Robert Hunt, the right tackle, another very good NFL prospect. So whenever the Cajuns are running to the right side, with those backs that they have, Elijah Mitchell, Trey Regis and company, they're going to have a ton of success. Raymond Calais is another one that can hit the home run. So the running game of the Cajuns, I think, will be the reason why they knock off the Bobcats. Passing game, still a little bit of a question mark for the Raging Cajuns. Haven't found that consistency yet, but good thing they have the ability to lean on their ground game. That's what will get them bowl eligible against Texas State.
Let's move now to the Mountain West Conference. Boise State, they're back in the rankings again. They take on San Jose State. San Jose State has been one of the more surprising teams. The Spartans team has been pretty good so far. Boise State's going to get a test.
Yeah, you talked about it, them being the surprising team. Quietly, they were in the same boat as Buffalo and Eastern Michigan. And they get a great win against Army, which one I didn't expect to happen. They looked convincingly better than Army in that ball game. So this is a tough test right here for Boise State. Could be a fly in the ointment game. But we talked about Boise and having a lot of game experience. Seems like they play more than anybody else. But they're good on defense. They have a really good improving freshman quarterback back there that does a great job in not turning the ball over. He's a tough player as well. I think Boise stays undefeated and gets the win.
We move now to the FCS, and we move to the NEC. St. Francis taking on Duquesne. Duquesne, this is a critical game for them if they want to keep pace with Central Connecticut State and Robert Morris, but St. Francis will be a difficult team for them to face.
Yeah, because how they match up, and this is a game that's tailor-made for a low-scoring affair, who has the ball last type cliche, but Duquesne really has to find a way to play a consistent 60-minute ball game, something we haven't really seen them do a lot this season. This is not your Duquesne team of last year or the year before where they just look dominant. They're just running roughshod of the NEC. So this game will be closer, but I think they have enough to get the win. I do like the Dukes.
Let's stay in the FCS and move to the Big South now. Charleston Southern taking on Gardner-Webb. Both teams have improved nicely this year from 2018. You've seen Gardner-Webb play. They've got some pro prospects at wide receiver. How does that match up with Charleston Southern's defense?
Well, that's going to be the matchup. Can that secondary of Charleston Southern match up against those big, tall oak trees that they have out there on the perimeter? I love what they have at quarterback, and he's throwing the football really well. Their run game is excellent. They have a really good senior back there at tailback, so they have a lot of balance. Defensively, their defensive line, they're running 3-4, so their defensive line has done a great job of crowding the line of scrimmage. And they put a lot of pressure on those linebackers to make tackles. And we're starting to see that a little bit more so than earlier in the year. You want to see your linebackers make impactful plays. Now they're starting to make those impactful plays. I think that'll be the reason why they knock off Charleston Southern. I do like the defense of Gardner-Webb. They're starting to catch up to what the offense is doing, and that makes them a dangerous team down the stretch.
Let's move now to Division II, our PSAC game of the week. Kutztown taking on Westchester. Kutztown's got a running back that you really liked. He had a big game last week. The question is, can he carry over 2 weeks in a row?
Abdul Hassan Neblet from Newark, New Jersey, the Kutztown running back, 10 carries, 203 yards, and 3 touchdowns last week in a win versus Shippensburg. That's getting the job done. This is a program that has normally pumped out some good offensive linemen, some good running backs. They have one now in Craig Reynolds that plays for the Washington Redskins, but this school is known for their most famous alum, and that's Andre Reed, the Hall of Famer that played with the Buffalo Bills. But I said all that to say this. This is a huge game. You want to be the sole owner of number 1 in the PSAC East, you have to beat Westchester. I always talk about Westchester's O-line and D-line. I do think Kutztown gets the job done and knocks off the Rams because of their element of speed coming out of the backfield.
Let's move to another D2 game this week. Lincoln of Pennsylvania taking on Bowie State. Who should we watch in this game? Is there anyone in particular that you think can make a big impact?
Their defensive end for Bowie State in Jason Rogers. He was a guy that caught my attention last year against Wagner. I was looking at Amir Hall, the all-everything quarterback for Bowie State last year, and Rogers kept making plays, kept showing up in the backfield, kept finding himself getting pressure. And he's right now coming off a game where he had a sack and a half, and also 1.5 TFLs too. So he's living in the backfield. Lincoln right now is struggling putting together any level of consistency on the offense. So I think the defense of Bowie, who right now has been playing lights out, they're 8-0 on the season. Look for them to move on to 9-0 after they knock off the Lions.
Let's move to Division 3 now. A huge game in the NUMAC. The average SAT score of this game is probably going to be about 1,700 as WPI takes on MIT. WPI, though, has been a force this season. They are the favorites to win the automatic bid out of this conference. MIT, though, always a difficult game.
Well, quarterback Julian Nyland of WPI, 14-18 last week for 333 yards and 4 touchdowns. So the passing game, he doesn't throw a lot. They average about 18 to maybe 20 to 21 passes a game, but he's been highly effective and efficient, over 65% completion percentage. Their offense is dynamic. They're playing a great brand of football. Up there are the Engineers. I like WPI to get the win.
And one more game to talk about here. Ohio Northern taking on Mount Union. Close proximity, but maybe not too close on the football field. Mount Union just moved back up to number 1. They were behind Mary Hardin Baylor, the last poll in D3. Will the class of D3 do it again against Ohio Northern?
First of all, Ohio Northern has the best mascot, the Polar Bears. It's a great mascot name, great color uniform, great scheme, all that stuff like that. But let me read some numbers to you. 5.9 points a game. Mount Union's defense is giving up. 74 yards a game rushing, they're giving up. 107 yards passing a game, they're giving up. Wow. This is the best defense in Division 3. I don't want to say there's a chance, a snowball's chance, that, you know what?
The
Polar Bears,
there it is.
But I don't think Ohio Northern gets to win. I like Mount Union. This is always one of the better teams in Division 3, but this defense this year just looks flat out outstanding.
That defense sounds a whole lot like Colgate's did last year in Division 1. Maybe we could put the two defenses against each other and see who comes out on top. I still have a feeling Colgate might.
I still think that Mount Union is masquerading as a FCS team. Like, that's a really good, strong football team.
It's only a matter of time. Move up, Mount Union. That'll do it for the College Football Tailgate Show. Don't forget to go to footballgameplan.com and youtube.com/footballgameplan for the FCS Whip Around, and check out the FCS Opening Drive podcast on SoundCloud and iTunes for all of your FCS news and notes every Monday. For Emery Hunt, I'm David Hassagen. Enjoy Week 10, and thanks for watching.